EEARTS family.
Hello, 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 hello. Hi.
So, guys, yes, the tensions are ratcheting up a lot more. And if we really follow the exact wording that we've heard come out of Chinese officials, for instance, then you might take it that there may very well be the beginning of war at any moment.
That's nothing to really smirk about, laugh about. That's concerning.
There's obviously major agendas well underway in this time of, I don't know what else you could call it. I mean, people have called that we are in a great reset. People are expecting a complete economic reset. There's a restructuring of everything on the globe going on. And there's deeper things afoot as well. But one thing I think all of us could agree on, besides the powers that be, is that the last thing anybody would need in these times, well, anybody that's not insane, is global conflict. And here we see U.S. troops have been deployed in Taiwan for at least a year. Small presence of Americans secretly training local forces marks concern over China's year-long military buildup and recent moves. This is becoming an infamous article from the Wall Street Journal. U.S. Special Operations Unit and a contingent of Marines have been secretly operating in Taiwan to train military forces there, U.S. officials said, part of the efforts to shore up the island's defenses as concerns regarding potential Chinese aggression mounts. About 24 members of U.S. Special Operations and support troops are conducting training for small units of Taiwan's ground forces, the officials said. The U.S. Marines are working with local maritime forces on small boat training. The American forces have been operating in Taiwan for at least a year, the officials said. The U.S. Special Operations deployment is a sign of concern within the Pentagon over Taiwan's tactical capabilities in light of Beijing's year-long military buildup and recent threatening moves against the island. Taiwan and U.S. officials expressed alarm over nearly 150 flights near Taiwan in the past week, that was in 4 days, by Chinese military aircraft. The Chinese aircraft have included J-16 jet fighters, H-6 strategic bombers, and Y-8 submarine spotting aircraft, and have set a record for such sorties, according to the Taiwan government. The China fights while not entering the area Taiwan defines as its airspace, have been a reminder of the Communist Party's view of Taiwan as being part of China. Beijing has vowed to take control of the island by force if necessary. Top U.S. military officials testified earlier this year Beijing is likely to try to use force in its designs on Taiwan within the next 6 years. Other officials have said China's timeline could be sooner than that. Taiwan's defense minister, Chu Guocheng, warned Wednesday that China would be able to launch full-scale attack on Taiwan with minimal losses by that infamous date of 2025. So, this, some people will right off the bat say, well, what's the big deal? Didn't we have somebody else, that guy from Texas, make the statement that we have 30,000 troops in Taiwan? Yeah, we did. We did. This is just an official confirmation, though, that we have a presence there. So, whereas that was something that was not confirmed, and the case may be that maybe there's not 24. There were some lawmakers out there today saying basically that, big deal, 24, should be 240 or 2,400 or 24,000. We should support Taiwan no matter what the cost. Be interesting to see what people across the United States and maybe the NATO countries feel about that. If they feel that protecting Taiwan from the CCP is worth any cost, because really the cost can be extremely high when you think about that. And me personally, there again, this is part of that divide and control matrix that we live in. And if one thing is not getting the desired results, then find something else to, another way of creating chaos and conflict.
I know. It's like they push, 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 and then when they realize that's not working, well, they just turn and change directions and push somewhere else until they get the favorite reaction or chosen reaction.
China fires back at reports of U.S. commandos in Taiwan. See whether the PLA, which is the People's Liberation Army, and it's so funny how the way things are named in this world. Are the Chinese people truly liberated because of this army? Well, they got social credit scores to spank them on the hiney. If they say things wrong, or maybe even think things wrong, or maybe they're buying too much. Maybe their carbon footprint is getting to be horrendous. So is that the army of a liberation agency? I don't think so. Of course, everything is the opposite of how they word things, and not just with communist China. We see this in so many places. How about, our own infamous Patriot Act? Patriotic, yes, yes. So everything we do, every single thing innocent people do is watched and listened to and categorized. And, I think a lot of the shows today really touch on just how much everything is monitored 24/7, 365. There's probably federal agents looking at people of interest, maybe anybody at all, that on that infamous day in January, you remember that day, right? Where people were in a building that they shouldn't have been in. And then, there's hundreds that are, who knows where they are exactly, but they're not home. They're not doing their thing. They all of a sudden got knocks on the door, and lots of people come swarming the house and take them away. And I'm getting off track there a little bit, but you get the point of the direction that everything is going in here. So, see whether the PLA will launch a targeted airstrike to eliminate those U.S. invaders. Aha, U.S. invaders. Chief of the Chinese Communist Party, that infamous PCC is what we call them. Again, we have to go backwards with algorithms and everything. So you can see that statement right there. Leaders in China almost immediately expressed outrage Thursday at a new report indicating that the U.S. has secretly stationed forces on Taiwan in an attempt to bolster the island nation's defenses against the increasing likelihood of attack from the mainland, as we've been speaking about. It's interesting too, and maybe it's just a coincidence, but we see an attack submarine, the USS Connecticut, suffers underwater collision in the South China Sea. And yeah, some sailors were injured. They say nothing is life-threatening, but about a dozen sailors have been injured. Unknown object. And it was interesting because I asked Cindy to remote view this, check with the guides, and she got that it was, you want to tell them?
Well, it's hard to, well, it's not hard to explain. It was a big round. They're showing me this big round shiny thing, kind of shiny, hitting from the water, going up and hitting it.
Do you think it was a mine?
Well, I was thinking a mine, but more UFO-y, so it feels better.
Interesting. Well, maybe it was perhaps a drone. I mean, it could have been.
Yeah, it was made underwater drone or something like it was. But yeah, they showed me it was metal. It was round and it was coming up from the water.
Is this controller technology or under the auspices of a certain country?
No, it's controller technology.
So yeah, I mean that's the first thing, and of course there are some that have made comments where they're like, "Can you just deliver the news?" Because they might not believe that there's actually extraterrestrials, interdimensionals involved in our doings here. But most definitely, that's a big part of all we see. So, would the controllers want to create this circumstance? Yeah, this has always been part of the plan. 1871, 3 World Wars. So interesting, coincidence? I don't really believe in coincidences.
No.
No, there's series of events that have gone down very, very strange routes to bring us to huge global escalations in the past. As we have talked about World War One, a driver making the wrong turn happens to get an archduke assassinated, and hence, the start of WW1. Yeah, I don't think this is a coincidence. That's just me.
Well, maybe this was like an alien vessel making a wrong turn, and
Yeah, wrong turn because they want to get something going here. Seawolf class nuclear attack submarine USS Connecticut suffered an underwater collision while operating in international waters on October 2nd, is returning to port. U.S. 7th Fleet, U.S. Pacific Fleet spokesman confirmed to USNI News on Thursday. So this is a Seawolf class fast attack submarine. Struck an unknown object while submerged. No life-threatening injuries. And I had shared with you guys before that my grandfather spent his entire life pretty much on subs and actually helped to build the Nautilus, which was the first nuclear sub, period. And he was like 30 years basically in the Navy, and the vast majority of it on subs. And I've been in some of those World War II class subs. There's no way I could do that. Talk about claustrophobia. Ooh. And by the way, when we look, we see right here the USS Carl Vinson, and we have the HMS Queen Elizabeth operating here in the South China Sea. So, tensions are very, very high right now. The CIA creates a new mission center, or new mission centers, plural, focused on China and technology. So CIA Director William Burns announced a series of organizational changes intended to hone the agency's focus on key national security challenges, including the launch of 2 new mission centers, one focused on China and another dedicated to transnational and technological threats. As we move deeper into this century, and there's a lot of people that have looked at everything going on, and for the most part, many people would say, well, these things, we run into these things, they escalate, then they calm down, they simmer, they'll brew again, then you run into something else, but it'll calm down. There's a lot of unusual things going on. Here we have Japan's largest warship launching U.S. Marine F-35s. These are the first fighters to fly from a Japanese ship since World War II time. So, again, we're into a little bit of unprecedented waters with what we have going on right now. And this is out of South Front. U.S. stealth jets become first fighters to fly from Japanese ships. So we had talked about the U.S., the U.K., and Australia forging ahead. Japan most definitely is part of this mix. As Japan themselves, they have been doing a very, very speedy military buildup to counteract, because everybody knows that China is on the rise, and apparently the U.S. is in decline. And how many citizens in the U.S. right now would agree that the U.S. is on decline?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think the vast majority would say, hey, this feels like Rome when it was falling. Where are the barbarians at the gates? They're behind schedule.
It's definitely a struggle for so many.
It is. Now, this is out of South Front too. The U.S. knows it could lose a war against China. So why is it provoking it? There's all these logical questions that you got to look deeper and deeper in. So the drums of war are beating. Countless films and books have been produced on the subject of war with China, but it seems now we are closer than ever before to some kind of actual military conflict. The fact that such a military confrontation would be catastrophic and devastating for all parties concerned seems so blatantly obvious that it needn't be said. And yet, because the American military establishment is actually discussing war with China, one finds it necessary to repeat it. as retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis writes. Now, so this is not this author. This is a U.S. Lieutenant Army Colonel, retired, writing his opinion. And he states there is almost no scenario in which the U.S. can successfully intervene in a war between China and Taiwan that will not leave our country in far worse shape than it is right now. I think, we're in a pretty crappy shape, right now when you look at the state of everything, not only in the U.S., but across the globe right now. In a worst case scenario, American territory could be struck by NUKE missiles. Thankfully, the Galactics have said they will not allow a major conflagration of that level.
No, they won't. Not like that.
Mm-mm. Yet, there are increasing signs that some in the U.S. establishment are prepared in principle to use military force against China over Taiwan. In February this year, Senator Rick Scott reintroduced the Taiwan Invasion Prevention Act, sponsored by Congressman Guy Reschenthaler in the U.S. House of Representatives to protect Taiwan from Communist China's growing aggression. It's no secret that General Secretary Xi is bent on world domination. The U.S. cannot sit back and let it happen. And then it goes on to say the Biden administration's appeasement policy towards Communist China is dangerous. If President Biden fails to stand up to Secretary General Xi, it will have absolutely devastating consequences for the national security of the U.S. and our allies. He obviously doesn't appreciate the devastating consequences that would come with war with the PRC. Last Friday, the Deputy U.S. Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks, said that in a scenario where China was to invade Taiwan, we have a significant amount of capability forward in the region to tamp down any such potential. As David Davis pointed out in his latest piece for The Guardian, either Hicks is unaware of how little wartime capacity we actually have forward deployed in the Indo-Pacific, or she's unaware of how significant China's capacity is off its shores. But in whichever the case, we are in no way guaranteed to tamp down a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. A Hoover Institution discussion earlier this year with retired U.S. General H.R. McMaster and former White House advisor Matt Pottinger also highlighted just how eclipsed the U.S. is militarily in the Asia-Pacific region. China far surpasses the U.S. in terms of military equipment, particularly in number of warships, fighter jets, and submarines. It was agreed during the conversation that the U.S. administration has been complacent about the rise of China and that the U.S. was potentially on a path to exquisite irrelevance. The question was asked whether the U.S. was overextended. As historian Niall Ferguson has said, as a student of history, I see a very dangerous situation. The U.S. commitment to Taiwan has grown verbally stronger as it has become militarily weaker. Perhaps Taiwan will turn out to be the American Empire what the Suez was to the British Empire in 1956, the moment when the imperial lion is exposed as a paper tiger. Losing Taiwan would be seen all over Asia as the end of American predominance. It would cause a run on the dollar. It would be the American Suez. A RAND document from 2016 entitled War with China, Thinking Through the Unthinkable, also supports the fact that a U.S. win in such a conflict is far from guaranteed. It concludes, as China's military improvements neutralize the military advantages of the United States, and because technology favors conventional counterforce, war between the two countries could be intense, last a year or more, have no winner, and inflict huge losses on costs on both sides. The longer such a war continued, the more significant economic, domestic, political, and international effects would become. Daniel Davis goes further to say the most likely outcome of such a war would be a conventional defeat for the U.S., or even worse, it escalates into a nuclear exchange. Yet through the U.S. continued aggressive rhetoric and support for Taiwanese independence, both financially and militarily, it continues to provoke China into a conflict it quite frankly couldn't handle. And it goes into everything that's been going on right now. So it's interesting when you look at the numbers, because again, the U.S. spends at the moment, if we look at the most current numbers, about 4 times what China does, which really is narrowing the gap. But where is that money really going, as we have alluded to in the past? There is so much corruption and so much mismanagement, so much entitlement, and so much payoffs. And it's just staggering. And again, the people of the world, this is the big thing. I don't think the average people really want any conflict. I think we could all get along well. It just seems to be always the leadership, and that speaks volumes.
It sure does.
So we see from Microsoft, they're saying Russia's behind 58% of detected state-backed hacks. So one thing not to lose sight is that Russia and China militarily have been working hand in hand. And when you fight one, you're going to fight both, at least initially. And that's definitely the case. Russia is ready to beat back potential U.S. invasion with drones and jets. Moscow's military scientists claim in new conflict analysis. While we've all been asleep, it's interesting how all these numbers have changed, it seems, just overnight. When you look at the size of the militaries, the technology involved, if you just go back like 4 or 5 years, everything has shifted so much so that it feels that the strong upper hand is actually on the Chinese-Russian side. And, we have Russia testing out these new hypersonic missiles successfully time and time again, while the U.S. can't seem to duplicate that. And then we're told that China has the same thing, and Russia has Robocop. Yes. Ew. Remote Far Eastern Vostochny spaceport to trial. Unmanned self-driving combat robot for patrol duty that, get this, could be used in Mars or the moon or any other world. So they're ready to send this not just to police around Earth or into conflict on Earth, but this is something they're going to send out into space. They're just going to trickle in the fact that we're going to get slowly used to the whole concept until, we actually do see beings that you're going to say, that's strange. They don't look exactly like us. They feel kind of weird looking at them.
Yeah, I mean, how do they know this thing is going to operate and shoot bullets the same way in space as it does on Earth? Well, unless they've already done it or something.
Yeah, well, they're just checking with their reptilian friends, I'm sure. I
see. Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Again, drones, the technology, everything is increasing so fast, and as above, so below. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about what's going on out in space is coming to Earth, and we are going to be doing the same going out there. Americans sense China eclipsing U.S. economically. So says a new poll. The majority of people actually polled said that China probably has economically passed the U.S. already. And this was a very telling statement that almost, it's like, I don't know if we should say this, but Brazilian President Bolsonaro, who is a very, very interesting person to say the least, well, he's calling on all citizens to arm themselves immediately. Seriously, he is. Why? Because a well-armed public will never... Can you guys read that? I mean...
Yes, please read it. We don't want to say it out loud.
Please read that highlighted portion, because, yes, we don't dare say that out loud.
Nope.
But wow, here you have a president of Brazil making a big statement. That's a big statement. Mm-hmm. Is that not a big statement? And then we had some quakes, guys. We had some quakes. Tokyo 6.1, bringing public transportation to a halt, causing some power cuts and some nervous people. There's video, and you could see the links there. that show some nervous people when everything starts to shake. And yeah, they can be much stronger. And Tokyo most definitely is one of the largest, most heavily populated world capitals that can definitely have massive earthquakes. That's just part of living there. Just like if you're living in San Fran or LA, you're going to feel the earth shake every now and then. Over in Pakistan, though, we have a 5.9 that did cause loss of life, at least 20, and injured over 300 people. And this was at that magical depth of 10 kilometers that they always, tend to list the shallow ones at, which is 6.2 miles. So we send our prayers to everybody over there. And then you guys remember that quake, that 6.0 that hit Crete in Greece. 4,000 homes uninhabitable because of this quake. And again, that was a 6.0. It wasn't a 7 or anything. However, a lot of these are very old structures, but they're still, people's houses. And now you got 4,000 homes that are no longer being able to use as a home. World food prices hit 10-year peak. Yes, 10-year peak. Have you guys noticed the change? I think people are noticing it now. We went food shopping because we have seen a lot of photos coming in from different areas of shelves that are pretty empty and stuff. But the shelves were not empty. Everything in the store was fine. They had some decent sales. The one thing I did notice, it seemed to me that gas. Now, I only bought gas once in the last month because we haven't really been doing any driving. Just a couple miles down the road to the lake. That's about it. Yeah, it seemingly went up about 30 cents a gallon in like a real short period of time. And here you see today we're at $3.20 per gallon, average price per gallon nationwide. It's a full dollar over last year. So, and we keep seeing these photos of, these ship tracker photos that show tons and tons of cargo ships and also fuel ships that apparently are just kind of sitting there. So, I think a lot of people are scratching their heads on what's exactly going on. Now, of course, we have our opinion on what's going on. As we said, this is a well-orchestrated, as Megadeth said, symphony of destruction. For those of you headbangers from back in the 80s and 90s, it's a symphony of destruction. And it's orchestrated. What does that mean? Well, think of an orchestra. You got all these different components to an orchestra, all these different people playing different instruments. Bring in the violins. Okay, that means, let's attack the gas supply now. Okay, get the cello going, and okay, well, we need another war somewhere. It's that type of symphony of destruction, and maybe that's saying too much right there. Right. America is running out of everything. Does it seem like that? And this is an article from The Atlantic just talking about, well, this person's feeling. Is it just me, or does it feel like America is running out of everything? So they say they visited CVS last week to pick up some at-home, tests. They've been sold out for a week, an employee told me. So I asked about paper towels. Well, we're out of those too. Try Walgreens. I drove to Walgreens. They had paper towels. But when I asked a pharmacist to fill some very common prescriptions, he told me the store had run out. Try Target up the street, he suggested. Target's pharmacy had the meds, but its front area was only alarmingly barren, like the canned food section of a grocery store 1 hour before the hurricane makes landfall. This is the economy now. 1 hour errands are now multi-hour odysseys. Next day deliveries are becoming next day after the next. Yes, that's true. I have found more things that just disappear and they never get delivered. I don't know where they went. And we have to reorder it, and then something will come, in a day or two. Why did it take 2 weeks for you to say that we don't know where it went? Have you guys been running into that too? And when I called around because we had to get an oil change and just was checking, how long, how much, I found out there was like an oil shortage. You know, one of the clerks that answered me said, yeah, I think we have full synthetic. You know, everything is going up right now and supply is tight because of the oil shortage. Um, yeah, it's really manifesting, but this is exactly what the Galactics and Laurel told us. She said a couple weeks ago that you'll really start to notice things in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just going to, you know, this is the slide that we're on. This is it's kind of an avalanche. You know, the rocks are falling, they're going to pick up steam, and they're going to pick up more rocks on their way down.
It is, and you know, it's going to hit us kind of sudden, but we're going to be able to look back and say, wow, that was pretty obvious. But they're doing it slow enough so that people don't panic, but fast enough to be effective.
This is the old frog in a pot of boiling water.
Yep.
And I think that they're starting to notice that it's getting a little hot in the boiling pot.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the whole thing, too, with the conflict, so we asked the guides because the guides have been saying that the main conflict between the U.S. and China more than likely would be more around that 2024-2025 time frame. When asked now, the time frames moved dramatically up. They're saying, like right now, with the timeline that we're on, probabilities are that we could see actual direct conflict within maybe 3-month period. We might see something break out, such as the Taiwan situation.
Mm-hmm. It could be that soon. That's what they're looking at right now.
The chances are going up, and what they keep saying to us too when we close with them is, we need you. All of us. They need all of us to change this timeline. So how do we do that? Again, it's through intent, and it's through getting out of the system. You know, what if, all right, look what just happened with those dates for men that we've been talking about. There's so many people that fly things. I saw one number that was showing that 30% of the people that, you know, basically fly the big planes over our head every day still haven't gone along with those dates for men, and maybe won't. What if globally we had, just for a start, 30% of all the military personnel from, like, even the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, that, you know, they're going to liberate everybody into slavery. Mm-hmm. What if, you know, we had 30 to 50% of all them saying, hey, no, we don't go along with this. This is the wake up that we have to have. There's a biblical term, right? Turning swords into plowshares. Well, what if people in droves just wouldn't enforce the will of the controlling, ruling entities that we have, and just, you know, throw all the weapons in a pile and just say, no, we're going home. We're going to plant some corn. We're going to plant some peppers. We're going to plant some tomatoes. I'm going to help, you know, Aunt Jane with this and that and getting her garden going. Going to help my brother-in-law get his garden going. You know, we all got a lot to plan for here. You know, what if in droves people stepped away from those positions that they use people to enforce their will? Then we could start getting a change. Then we could definitely start getting a change. So a Mars rover explored a wasteland and found an oasis. Millions of miles away on the surface of Mars, inside an enormous crater, a little NASA rover's taking some interesting pictures. The view is quite stunning there. Miles of undisturbed cinnamon terrain, scattered with pebbles and boulders, with silky dunes where craggy bedrock doesn't peek through. But when the rover, named Perseverance, sent the photos back from the crater, known as Jezero, scientists saw something more. Well, what did they see? The arrangement of the sediment. It resembled a certain familiar landscape on Earth. Those boulders, a strong current had carried them in. Jezero, scientists can now see, wasn't always dry and desolate. It was once a lake. And Perseverance rover was roaming what used to be a delta, where a small river met calm waters. A few billion years ago, they say. It could have been just sloshing with water. Not hard to imagine at all. So, as Cindy asked the guides again, when was this, and what caused this? And as we've shared before with Mars, it wasn't a natural calamity. No, 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 no.
No, not at all. It was unfortunately, it was those things that we're not allowed to talk about that happened, but it was very different at one point until that happened.
It was a beautiful planet.
Very beautiful, very stunning. There are things there that we would find familiar on Earth, and then other things that were foreign yet still beautiful. Very exotic type of land, and all over the place. All over the place, it was exotic and beautiful, breathtaking, stunning, and then that happened.
And the cause of it was war.
Mm-hmm.
And the cause of it was a war that included that NUKE weaponry, and they basically destroyed the planet. There are still people there. There are people under the surface. There are humans and non-humans working together under the surface. Yeah, they're still mining what they can do, and they're still building things. But the planet was a beautiful planet like Earth, and it suffered this fate. And it's all because of the power structure. And ultimately, left to their own devices, Earth will look like Mars, which again, both planets are heading down the same fate as Nibiru.
Mm-hmm.
If, they had their way, because Nibiru itself is a wasteland. When you look to Nibiru, it really hits me as in Star Wars, the third episode, when you go see Vader's castle and everything. I mean, it's not a hospitable place for the most part, but it was beautiful. It had a unique beauty. But again, these beings destroy everything. They are so destructive. It's an internal self-destruction that is to be pitied. It truly, truly is to be pitied, because they have disconnected themselves from Source. And they don't have that love and peace on the inside that we have, and we can do so much more to cultivate as well, with all these just wonderful practices that all start by going within and spending time out in nature, reconnecting to the divine feminine. Start by reconnecting to the earth itself.
Yes, go within, go outside, get barefoot, stand on the ground, feel that dirt, because it's very much like two magnets. When you have a human standing on the earth, barefooted, it strengthens the earth, and the earth strengthens you. It's a very symbiotic relationship, and they've done everything that they can possibly do to try to break that connection.
Mm-hmm. So please do, if you guys haven't seen them, check out our playlist. That's Qigong, energy work, and see what you find there. Meditation as well. There's a lot of different, I think we have somewhere around 40 or 50 videos on that playlist, and then about another 25 on the mantras playlist. And I do want to go in deep, much, much deeper. I'm planning on doing some mantra videos, which I know, they don't get 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 views, but they are truly appreciated by the people that are delving deeper into this and obtaining the benefits of the peace and the joy and the happiness, and also the expanded consciousness that the mantras can bring. So I will do some, and maybe Cindy will help with that as well, doing them in repetitions so you guys could follow along. And I think that will help people. We've had numerous people mention that would be very helpful. So we do plan on doing that as well. So thank you guys so much for your support on Ko-Fi and also on Patreon. Also, those of you that have checked out Medicinal Foods, lots of good stuff. Use coupon code EEA to get 5% off your order. And then as you fill up the cart, you could get up to 25% off and also free shipping. Lots of good stuff that's all healthy and immune boosting. And, you know, we couldn't do it without our Patreons as well.
And yes, we could not do it without our Patreons. We want to say a huge thank you to Beverly and Patricia.
Thank you so much, Beverly and Patricia, for your support and all you that have been with the channel. As always, guys, stay prepared out there. Keep going with your positivity, with your prayers, doing your mantras and your meditations, your affirmations. You know, this is a unique experience for all of us, but together we can affect positive change on the planet. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.